Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Gap Fireside Chat, where we talk about causes of and solutions to the talent gap. I'm your host, Pete Strauss, and joining me today is Mike Lyborg. He is the CISO over at Swimlane. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here.
Well, thanks for being here. Could you give our audience a little background on yourself and your career?
Yeah. Name, obviously Mike, but been with Swimlane now for almost 8 years. So started there more of on a consulting basis, and then that evolved throughout the years and through growth to finally end up here as a CISO. It's been a really good ride, and just super excited to where we're at, the teams that we have in place, and what we're doing. From prior to that, I built a couple of security and risk management programs, and then spent about 12 years at United States Marine Corps. So it was more physical security than cyber and info, but they all kind of blend together, right? That fusion of all. Prior to that, I did IT and network security. And way before then, I moved here from Sweden, so that's why I have a funny accent, so I apologize.
Well, I think our audience is open to a slight departure from what we're used to, so I think we're good there. What are your thoughts on the talent gap? Do you think it's a real thing in security?
I think it is what you make it to be, right? I think if we as leaders, if we're looking for unicorns, and we have these really firm requirements on this is the only person that I will take. Now you narrow that scope down, so it may look like you're that there is a real gap. We try to do something differently, at least at Swimlane, and most of my friends and peers that I know of is bring people in and then enable them through training on the job, and then hopefully by using tech and tooling, give them and afford them the time to become more of a jack of all trades and a master of many. So basically building people up to get there. Yeah.
That's awesome. How do you avoid, I guess, falling into the trap where your list of requirements becomes so long because you have so many specific gaps to fill? Do you just, I guess, kind of program in a longer ramp up time for somebody to where they can acquire the skills that they're missing? Or what's your strategy there?
Probably a little bit of hybrid of all the above there too, right? But we're fortunate we're at Swimlane because we have an automation platform, right, where we unify and orchestrate all of our signals. So as we do that, we really just train our new hires on that one platform and user experience. They may have really in-depth, been working in all these different technologies, EDR, MDR, XDR, SIMs, and everything else. But we primarily throw them in our platform first, and then automate as much as we can. And then from there, when you've automated, you have that one famous thing that you can't really buy is time left. So then now, if they are not a subject matter expert or not familiar with a specific set of tooling or tech in your stack, then we can extend them and give them that time to really focus on those skill sets.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like anybody is going to have some amount of ramp up time, provided they're not familiar with your platform already. That's interesting because most hiring managers I talk to, it's a very specific need where they have to have worked with CrowdStrike before or Elastic, that sort of thing. So if you know that anybody's going to have to adapt, I would imagine that you're looking for folks that can learn quickly, and a lot of those intangibles, which seem to come up quite a bit on this podcast, actually. It's interesting. The job descriptions tend to list just a bunch of hard skills. And then when you talk to the hiring managers, what they're really looking for are more the soft skills or the intangibles that you can't put on a job description. So how do you assess like somebody's ability to learn quickly, for instance?
Yeah, so you're spot on there, right? We focus a lot on aptitude versus those hard skills. And then we often throw problem sets, and it could be a programming language, it could be whatever. Let's say that they're not a master of Python, right? But they know enough to be dangerous. We don't restrict them and saying like, well, you can't, I want to see all your screens or something. Like, no, like we do research every day, 24/7. Like what we do is fun. And so we don't put the blinders on. We see how their logical mindset kind of works and goes through the progression of getting to the answer. So that's one of the ways, I guess. I'm not sure what else we do. I mean, I think for us, it's also really important, talking about work-life balance. I just came back from London, and I heard a way better say. I mean, this statement was pretty powerful to me. So it's not necessarily about work-life balance; it's about harmony. Like know when to work, know when to focus on family, and kind of split and segregate the two, or bring them together. Because now you get best of both worlds, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw a LinkedIn post not long ago. I think it was earlier this week where it was a recruiter that was posting about the idea that, if you're a job seeker, you probably shouldn't ask about work-life balance in the interview process because it'll put a bad taste in the hiring manager or, the recruiter's mouth. What's your thoughts on that? Like, do you think that's a red flag for people that don't want to work hard, or do you think they're just, reasonably, I guess, looking at, hey, can I keep a family happy and also work at the same time?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would expect the latter, right? To like exactly that is work to live or live to work. I mean, you can toss it up that way too, right? If you're not having fun and you're not ambitious about what you do, and then that's going to be hard anyhow, and that will probably kind of shine through the interview and screening processes. But when you're eager to learn, I mean, like I said earlier, that this is probably the best job on earth right now. That's how I feel, right? We get to, even though I'm not in the military anymore, or we're, a lot of our people at Swimlane are former service members. So there's a hard thing there saying like, well, how do I get to that level again? How do I feel the excitement? Well, here we get to do that quite a bit. Whether you're doing through a cyber range and doing attack scenarios and defending, but seeing how everything works and then figuring out and really asking the why, that's what makes everything fun.
Yeah, digging deeper past the surface. I do that as a recruiter as well. And I feel like that's one aspect where a lot of recruiters kind of tend to, I guess, falter a little bit, is that they're not asking the deeper questions. It's very much, going through a checklist of, okay, location, skills, and that's how I started my career. But the longer I've gone on, the more I've learned to dig in and ask those follow-up questions and really try to understand somebody. But I'm also naturally a very analytical person, and I don't think everybody's necessarily wired that way. Do you think is analytical ability or, ability to dig deeper, is that something that you can screen for?
I think through some of the labs, right, you can kind of see some of the thought process. It's like going back to elementary school, right? Like you could certainly find the answer using a calculator, but if you can demonstrate that you know how to get to the answer using whatever method that you need to get there, right? That's when it gets more interesting. So if that's what we do here. It's a lot of labs and a lot of ways of kind of assessing that aptitude and the drive and the hunger to get to the why, and this is how we do it. And I also think it's important, right? If everybody just hired all these unicorns and everybody came from the same group of schools, right? Now you wouldn't really have that diversity of thought and experience. So taking someone that recently joined the cybersecurity, maybe they just did a boot camp, and then getting them into a program and watching them learn, that's probably one of the best thing that you can do, or at least that in my experience, that I've been able to do.
Yeah, for sure. Mentoring the next generation and seeing them be excited about the things that they're learning, and that level of enthusiasm, I think, is certainly infectious. Even, up to the ranks of the C-suite, they get excited about people being excited about their job. How do you think, because I think there's a big gap in the industry right now. I call it the talent bottleneck at the entry level. We have tens of thousands of people that want to break into the industry competing for only a handful of jobs. how can we build more of these pipelines to train more of these entry level folks when everybody's basically hiring reactively and saying it's not my problem? Let somebody else hire the juniors, basically. What do you think the business case is there, or how can you justify it?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think it comes back to the leadership themselves, right? Like, they have to want to do it, and you take a risk, but then the reward is greater than the risk, in my experience from doing that. So we here at Swimlane, we've a couple of times done internships where we even take high schoolers, and we have hackathons, and we pick somebody out of the group, however that selection process works, or even see if there's an interest. And a great success story there. We had one individual that was with us through his high school years. He's now off to university, but we still stay in touch. And the exposure that he got throughout those months, and actually ended up being a couple of years because he worked part-time for us while he was at uni as well, is really amazing. So I think, to me, that's the risk and reward. But you can also fall flat on your face by hiring that one unicorn, and then that's not a good team fit, or whatever else you have to consider, right?
Yeah, it strikes me that you're making a very long-term investment there. That's not somebody that you're going to get immediate ROI on necessarily. I mean, I would imagine you get some, but not compared to, say, one of the unicorns that, you hire that person, basically plug that hole, and they're able to do everything you need them to right away. I mean, you're looking at least 4 years down the road to bring somebody from at some point in high school through college and keeping in touch with them. And then, at least 4 years later, hiring them possibly down the road. How can we convince companies and hiring teams to look at that sort of time horizon versus, okay, I have this immediate need, maybe somebody left, or, we're experiencing growth, but we have this very specific need right now. I just don't envision a scenario in which we're going to build a whole program around hiring junior people when we don't know what our future needs are going to be. Like, I guess, could you put yourself in that person's shoes, and is there a case to be made there?
Well, I think you have to have the foster the kind of culture, right, where that's acceptable, first and foremost, and then maybe build a program, a formal program around it first and foremost. But if you look at a lot of our employees, at least, especially, I'll speak for my team, right? Many years of tenure. And I think that's what you get is now you build, not only a friendship and a professional one, and hopefully even a personal level. But by going through the pains together, and sharing and learning, right? Because even from the high schooler, like there are things that we learned every day, because very different mindset, very different appetite, and all those experiences made all of us better, right? So that's what we look as a trade-off. And then whether they stay a year after you hire them, or they stay 5 years or 10 years, I think that showcases a bit of that culture, hopefully, and what you now build together, right, as a program. So that's the value to me.
For sure, yeah. And when you were talking about your experience and that you've been with Swimlane for 8 years, what struck me is that's a really long time in security. It seems like people are switching jobs every year or two on average, and the younger generations even more often than that. What do you think companies are doing wrong to not retain people to where they're wanting to switch jobs every 6 or 12 months?
I think one of the biggest thing, at least for me, is kind of delegation and passing the torch, right? So every time we, as we continue to grow and we size up our teams, whether it's in engineering or product or sales or security and IT and GRC, as we kind of grow those teams out, I think it's important to then kind of focus on, well, why did they join the team, and what do they want to do? So what's success to them? Do you give them the freedom? Did you deputize them, I guess is what some people say, right? So you give them enough rope to hang? Well, that sounds horrible. So, but you get the drift, right? I think that is really it. When you empower people and they feel and they know that they're empowered, and you built that trust relationship with them, and you have the task, condition, and standard. You don't micromanage. You just say, okay, I'll see you in a month, or whatever that the project timeline is, so the deliverable looks like. Now, when they're empowered, they know that, hey, I can go and talk to everybody that I need to in their business. I can gather the required kind of controls and evidence or processes, and then build all of these new programs and tests out whatever it is that you're doing. But if you instead, on the flip side of that, is like, I think if you have micromanagers that lead with fear and that don't empower their people or let their people be empowered, they're the ones who are going to see very rapid turnarounds, possibly. It could be that, could be base pay, it could be a million things, right? But I think good benefits, a solid working environment with a healthy culture, that will get you the tenure and the experience, so you don't have to always be on the hunt.
Yeah, and I would imagine succession planning plays into that quite a bit too. Do people have promotion paths when somebody else is above them is promoted? What happens if somebody leaves? Are you mentoring that person underneath them to where they can fill in that position when that person leaves above them? So many people I talk to as a recruiter are looking to leave their position because they feel like somebody either needs to leave or get promoted, and everything's just kind of static. In a lot of organizations, like especially in consulting, the big four, they tend to be kind of top heavy. That's changing a little bit due to market conditions, but I think highly motivated employees are always looking for what's that next thing? What am I growing into? What can I look forward to? Because people are forward thinking, whether or not your employees are. They're always looking towards the future, at least if they're self-motivated and want to be autonomous. So you have to understand what their motivators are, I think, when you hire them. And I spend a lot of my time as a recruiter assessing those motivators and trying to match those to the employer and where they're headed. Because I think those motivators, more than anything else, are the way that you match employees for the long term. And I've had, people that have been in their positions 5, even 10 years now, as long as I've been recruiting in security, because I properly matched those motivators in the very beginning, and management recognized those motivators and was able to not necessarily cater the team and the culture to the individual, but at least create an environment where people with the right motivators can succeed and grow. So that's great to hear that you've been able to do that, and you have such long tenures on your team. I feel like that's such a rare thing. Anything else you could attribute your success in doing that to?
No, I think the plan of succession, right? And also, so if we go back to my Marine Corps days, we had this Christmas tree. It's for the enlisted corps, and you wanted to be basically the crown on that Christmas tree, right? Or the star. And that's really hard because you got a bunch of really good people around you. So everything you do or did was very competitive. I'm not advocating for that in corporate America necessarily. It doesn't have to be that cutthroat. But figure out a balance. I'm glad you brought that up. Figure out a balance of, are you a box, like a really flat top where everybody's kind of equal, right? So more of a linear than a pyramid approach. Because then you can build those plans and say that, hey, we don't care if we don't make room for you. Like, we will get you to where you want to go, but you also have to know your employees to know what that motivation is, to then ask, like, what is, why are you here? What do you want out of this? What do you want in 5, 10, 20 years? Where do you want to be with your family? Where do you want to be as a professional? Are there certain certifications or trainings or, summits and seminars you want to attend? Or do you want to be in the closet and just kind of hack away, right? Like, because some people just want to work remote, and that's cool. And they want to deliver the outcomes on the timelines that you've requested, and just have good communications. Meanwhile, others want to be maybe more in the spotlight. Is that what you say, right? And then climb up the corporate ladder. Maybe even do a lateral move to something from security to whatever else.
Well, and that's a good point about lateral moves. A lot of people are motivated just by continuous learning. And if they feel like they're getting stagnant in their skill set in some way, you may not need to promote that person. Maybe you just cross-train them, have them shadow another team or something like that. But to your point, it's very much, I think, about listening to the employees as time goes on and keeping those continuous touch points, I guess. Like, do you have that enshrined in some sort of policy where you do quarterly check-ins or reviews or something with your folks?
Yeah, we do have a periodic review. Oh, well, they're scheduled, right? And then we have obviously what we want to do, but we often find ourselves literally talking almost every day because of the nature of our business, right? So there's a lot of check-ins, but then we try to do weekly or bi-weekly, like one-on-ones, and often we do skip levels as well, so that how a couple of levels down, maybe how your people are doing. That way, it's not a surprise. I'm not advocating them from them going around their leadership, but I think it's really healthy just to have a chat and know what they're doing when they're going on vacation, what they did last weekend, what they love about their job, what they want to change and improve. If they could be CEO for a day, whatever that talk track is, will get you to know them a lot better and hopefully drive their continuous success as well.
For sure. Well, and I think just any employee feeling heard is a big driver behind retention too. Again, as a recruiter, I hear all the stories about how I have all these great ideas and just nobody listens to me. There's just no communication happening up or down the hierarchy in the organization. And I just kind of feel like I'm stranded out on an island, especially for remote teams, which, I'm a huge remote work proponent. But at the same time, I think when mismanaged, people can feel like they're kind of out on an island. So, I mean, it sounds like you and your team are constantly staying in contact. Do you do anything like, annual company party or any sort of team building?
Yeah, we do a couple of events generally every year. Obviously, we have our big sales kickoff, and we just had that back in January in California. So get to see a lot of the remote teams from our global reach. But even here in our headquarters in Denver, we tend to get together. We do happy hours, maybe little workshops, and just sharing of, hey, this is what I've been working on. Let me show you this, and then take feedback. And then I say, okay, that's good. Like, let's push that to production. From an orchestrator or IT automation, all the things that we try to do to help everybody else out, right? So a lot of small sessions, and then some bigger fun sessions is good healthy for the corporate climate as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, one of my favorite parts of working for a consulting firm back in the day was the annual company party. It's like, yeah, part of it was work and we had to present our plan for the quarter, but another part of it was just socialization and happy hours and just getting to know the folks face to face that you've met so many times on Zoom or Slack. So it's great to hear that you guys are able to do that. It seems like you're doing so many things right. What do you think companies are doing wrong when it comes to either I guess hiring or retaining folks in 2025?
I think probably the biggest thing, and I've done that as well, right? But it is putting too strict of requirements, like, oh, you have to have these 5 certifications, and you have to have this type of diploma, and you have to come from this background with 10 years of experience in security. And it's almost ridiculous. So don't do that. Change it all up and see what you get instead. That may not be for every company, but maybe we've just been lucky here, or I've been lucky elsewhere then too. But don't make it hard for people to come to you and submit their application. So that's another thing too, right? Everybody knows on LinkedIn, and they can probably just say like, hey, generate an AI CV and submit my thing, right? And like, who's going to look at that? Like figure out who the hiring manager is, and then get to know them if this is a company that you want to go to. And then once you have all of that information, if you're local in the area, go to a meetup. Or I'm not saying stalk in here. I'm just saying like figure out how to get into maybe a face-to-face or an out-of-band communications, and that then goes both ways. So now I'm going to go back on the corporate side, right? In a leadership position, make sure you're open to that. So when you do go out to these different events, you can then easily, communicate and sit down, have a coffee, talk through some of their experiences, and then see if it's a good match as well. I think I'm going to a Colorado Equal Security event here on Friday. And I think they're doing something. I don't know if this is new. You might have seen it before, but for those people looking for a job, they'll have a one color sticker, and for the people that are hiring, they'll have another sticker. So now they can just kind of group people together as well, which I think is awesome out here in Colorado.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a large part of the advice that I'm giving job seekers these days. If you figure that each application or each job posting is getting 500 applicants, you really have to do something to stand out. And it's almost like the more automation happens, the more there's noise in the market, the more those relationships matter. And, I've talked ad nauseum about this particular topic on previous episodes, but I think it is always good to highlight because, there's so many people that are frustrated in the job market right now that have applied to hundreds or thousands of jobs and they just can't seem to get any traction. So that advice that you gave is absolutely prescient.
Let me ask you a question then. Is that okay if I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're saying that there's a skills gap, but then we see the volume of applicants for all these jobs. So what gives from your perspective?
Yeah, I think there's an over-reliance on inbound applications by internal recruiting teams especially, but even some of my competitors are just posting jobs and fielding applicants. I don't think it's the most efficient way to recruit for a position. I think you should be going out to the market and finding the most ideal fits and then not wasting the time of all the people that aren't fits. And then there's, people that are just shooting their shot or they're using some sort of automation when they're not really a fit for the job. So we just have this giant matching problem. I think on the whole, the industry does not have a shortage of talent because we have so many people at the entry level that are just banging on the door to be let in, but they can't get in. And then there are certain senior level skill sets where there's just not enough people, where they're tiny little niches where just not a lot of people have filtered into those roles. And so we have a shortage in these few little areas. But I think broadly speaking, we have too many people, if anything. And the old statistics from IC Squared or, whomever talking about millions of unfilled jobs, I think in the first place, they were just projections. And they weren't actually talking about jobs that are currently funded, where the headcount's approved and the posting is online and the recruiting team is working on it. That's what we should be looking at. But there's no data on that I can tell. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, because I may want more people, but if you don't have the budget or, the headcount to add to your organization, then it doesn't matter how much you want it necessarily, right? So you got to kind of balance that. And if we're then saying that, well, everybody wants 10 more people, and then there's not 10 people. If you have a million companies saying we need 10 more security people, then I can see those numbers not really matching up and causing some interesting statistical data probably.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if that were the case where every hiring manager had 10 open jobs that they would like to hire and they actually had funded, then yeah, we would have a shortage of people probably. But that's not the case, especially in this economy. There's so much uncertainty in the market, and markets don't like uncertainty. So there's a lot of hiring freezes happening. We're recording this in April 2025. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I tend to favor the idea that we're going to see a gradual recovery in the job market, and we'll start to see less of a mismatch between number of job seekers and number of open jobs. Do you see it playing out that way or no?
Yeah, I most definitely do. I think as we get through some of the changes that have added some friction here and there, right? Um, that's going to hopefully open everything back up again, both on the market and on hiring and all things combined.
Yeah, one thing I see as a continuing theme, though, is cost reduction as an important measure or initiative right now. Is that something that you've encountered personally
Yeah, I think,
or have heard of?
yeah, no, absolutely, right? Like everybody loves the phrase "do more with less," but there's only so much that you can do with technology and automation and orchestration, right? And even with the age of AI, right? Like AI has some great, applicable use cases, but in my humble opinion, it's not going to replace humans yet. So we often say human intelligence comes first, but when you pair human intelligence with AI, now you can contextualize, you can summarize, you can find needles in these haystacks and make sense out of really complex data a lot easier. So if there's sorry, this is going to go on a tangent. So if there's something that I often look for, is like, if we're hiring new people, I'm not necessarily looking for someone with a 40-pound brain, right? That's a data scientist first. If they have lots of experience or a little bit of experience with AI, or they just know how to use whatever, I'll leave the labels and brands and company names out of it right now. But that's really important to me because there may be one less thing that I have to know that we have to train the individual on. But at the same time, that it takes time to understand how to do prompt engineering and what tool to use for what and when not to use it and how to test it. So ask those simple questions that you definitely 100% know answers to. And if you're not getting the answer that you should, then you got some work to do there, and maybe not use that model or that technology for some of those use cases.
Yeah, I guess my concern is if people that are, say, AI augmented are capable of doing orders of magnitude more work per person because they have the assistance of some sort of AI model that knows more than they do in some ways, and they're able to just get a lot more accomplished. Do you see that as potentially reducing the need for human minds and labor at all? Or do you think it's not a zero-sum game and we'll continue to need more and more human labor or mental decision making ability, what have you?
Yeah, I think it's we got to move the humans up, right, to manage the tuning, the control set of AI. So don't get stuck here saying that I'm going to get replaced by something one day. Because if that's how you look at life, then that could probably be a fact, right? Instead, say, what can I do next to set myself up for success in the future? And using AI nowadays, I think that's something that is pretty easy. You're not going to get around from it. Like you kind of have to start working by it and through it. So I'd say become a user and a manager of AI. Where you can use all the technologies in there and stay up to date at the rapid escalating pace that it's being consumed by everybody.
How do we get our arms around the governance of all of that, especially if you have a bunch of employees using a bunch of different models for various tasks? How do you manage all of that? That seems like a lot to oversee.
Yeah, I mean, I say first and foremost, put like guard rails around the enterprise subscriptions that you have and the agreements. We can at least control some of it. Then do your evaluation, and then add tools and tech to it. Obviously, there was some new technologies earlier this year that as soon as we started seeing that evidence, we were then starting to drop that kind of access to those tools. So I think it's a bit of a reactionary tale where you don't know everything that's going to be out there. You can't. And if you only allow access to X, Y, or Z, then that's awesome. But then don't make it too difficult for someone to say like, hey, well, I tried this at my house, on my personal device, really, really like it. What would it take for us to bring that into our stack? Because it's way better than these other, other technologies that you have in your stack. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I think on the GRC side of that is you can build a lot of controls into your existing, ecosystem to mitigate sending sensitive information, etc. But a lot of it also just comes down to training and enablement. So then have examples, and rather than doing your annual training, I said annual, like once a year, continuously provide feedback and maybe different or improved ways or things that we've learned not to do, to then share that so that other people don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, it strikes me as a lot of what it seems you'd be looking for on the employee side then would be adaptability. They have to be able to adapt to a new system you're implementing or new policy or, changing technological environment where all of a sudden one tool falls out of favor and another one comes to the forefront. And I think humans are the most adaptable species on Earth, famously. But do you think that are there certain characteristics or traits of somebody who's like more adaptable versus somebody else that you could kind of screen for?
Well, if I had that answer, I probably wouldn't be in cybersecurity, right? No, I honestly don't. I don't have a good answer for that. I go a lot on gut feelings too, right? And as you go through the screening process and meeting people, sometimes you just get that good feeling, and it's going to work out. That's not always the case, but if you do have that, then value that connection and then see where that goes. Because I think if we always just say you have to have these 19 hard skills, and you find someone that's 18, and you're like, yeah, I can't. It's not going to happen because you're missing this one piece. That's not fair to anyone either, right? And then you probably go back and waste more time in the hiring cycle, and then you rinse and repeat until you find maybe one day the perfect candidate. But then, who's to say that individual is not going to maybe blend well with the team? So now you could have taken those 6 months, taken a junior individual possibly even, or like depending on what the role is, right? And then gotten them to where you needed that individual to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think far too many hiring teams don't really think so much about time to hire. They're looking at finding that perfect quote unquote candidate, which in most cases doesn't exist, especially when you're looking for such a very strange combination of skills in some cases. I've seen job postings that are looking for GRC and vulnerability management and SIM administration. It's like, no, these are all very disparate skill sets. You could keep reposting that job every 3 months for the next 9 months. But you'd be better off, like you said, if you just hired somebody that checked a few of the boxes and had the right mindset, right motivation in the short term, and is able to get ramped up very quickly. It's interesting you mentioned a lot of hiring, I think, and I agree, comes down to gut. It's gut feeling. It's the art side of hiring and recruiting versus the science. And I think I have the science down to a science, but I don't know that, because humans are so fickle in a lot of cases. They operate on the fly a lot of the time. How do you trust your gut without succumbing to some sort of bias and weigh that against, the hard requirements that you have?
Yeah, that's use your team, right? Because I think when you have multiple people involved in that hiring process, you can get a couple of different perspectives, or where there may some things you don't see. I'm certainly not a perfect hiring manager, right? I've made my mistakes in the past, but every time when I've listened to the rest of the team you tend to have better outcomes. So I think that's what I use internally, right? Is solicit input from everybody else, have them part of that hiring journey. Yeah, at the end of the day, there could possibly be some bad blood, right? If you, depending on your organizational structure, and there's somebody that's come in and sit next or above somebody else. But generally, the feedback, if you have a good culture, is going to be spot on and help you make those tough decisions. Because yeah, your heart might be in one place and you really want to hire, but then there's part of the gut that says something else. But yet the individual has all your hard skills, like everything that you ever could have dreamt of. Then how do you build a balanced table to then say, okay, here's my scoring out of these 10 candidates that all match this. How do I get to the one? And that your team can often tell you who that one's going to be.
Yeah, totally agree. And you're looking for folks that fit in with the existing team, but I'm assuming may not necessarily be identical to your team in a lot of different ways. You keep mentioning culture, and obviously that's important to you. How do you define a successful company or team culture? What does that look like in practice? Like, are there certain traits that you think make up a good culture?
I mean, we have some good slogans at our company right now, right? But one of my favorite ones is punch above your weight class. The reason why I often look at that, right? Like we even have it in Slack. When someone does something really great and helps us elevate and continue to elevate, when we then give them that coin or the slogan of you're punching above your weight class, that's really impactful because they know that, hey, I'm way above where I need to be right now. So even a small gesture or a small saying can drive that culture and reinforce it versus, especially if you're in remote and everybody's Zooming and you're not, you're on Teams or whatever, you may not get that kind of experience. And then also make sure that your leadership shares when, you have some sort of award system or reward system where your employees feel the value that when they do go above and beyond, that there's something there for them. So when they continue to repeat that, quarter over quarter, year over year, there's something there for them.
That's awesome. So you're combining recognition of talent and effort with almost sort of like a common language. I would imagine you probably have other terms that you and your team use that may not be as prevalent outside the team, or inside jokes, that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about belonging these days, but I think having that common framework or that common knowledge, that common language can be a powerful way to make people feel included and like they're a part of a cohesive team and not just somebody who's out on an island by themselves. So that's a great point. We're actually coming up on time here, Mike. So just one last question for you. Is there anything we're not talking about in the industry, but we should be, especially as it relates to hiring?
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered most of it. But I think that the biggest thing is don't waste time on that back and forth and trying to find the unicorn. So we've already really talked about it, but I think find the right people for the job that have the aptitude, the drive, and that love doing what we'd love to do, which is, hunt for bad guys, solve complex problems, and use technology to become more efficient.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess from my side as a recruiter, I can say one little tip as far as not looking for unicorns is to think about what requirements you absolutely need somebody to have on day one. And then think about what requirements you could possibly train in the next 3, 6, 9 months. Those could all then be optional, and try and keep that must-haves list as short as you possibly can, because that broadens your candidate pool as large as you can. And then you can be more selective in looking for more of the, critical thinking ability and adaptability and that sort of thing, communication skills that you're screening for in the actual interview process. I can tell you some of those candidate pools get very, very small when you start adding up those giant lists of requirements.
I know we're close on time, but I was going to ask you, are you seeing trends as far as certifications, like industry certifications and standards? Anything on that we should talk about or no? Because, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, okay. So from my perspective, I was like, we can train you and enable you to get certified, right? Also, so should it be an entry point? And then also, do you see, I guess, with that? So now I'm loading on the questions because I'm curious. Like, I still like people that do A+, and I don't even know if that thing is around yet, but like A+, Security Plus, Network Plus, like the good old, hey, this is how networking works when you're not in a cloud environment, or this all feeds into the cloud. So understanding the technology from a very bare bone level helps people with security in very complex environments. Well, yeah, what say you on certifications?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are continually more and more certifications every year added by different certification bodies, I guess you'd call them. And it seems like there's just a big push to make a lot of money off of people getting a bunch of certifications and saying, okay, this is how you market yourself as a candidate better. It's through this particular certification. And everybody's made a mint off of the entry level folks trying to get their, Sec Plus and CYSA Plus and all those good things. I tend to favor the idea that I think people should be getting certifications as a part of their ongoing training through the employer, where it's paid by the employer. Because the most, I guess, valuable certifications are the ones that are the most expensive, like through SANS. And for somebody to drop that kind of money on, just on their own, unless they're already making a really, really good salary, that's very tough to do. So I tend to believe that, yes, certifications can serve as some sort of baseline, especially for the entry level folks. But once you start accruing 5-10 years of experience, a lot of hiring managers I've talked to, they don't necessarily put as much stock in it. I think the most valuable certifications are the ones that show some sort of hands-on ability to do something, like the OSCP. That's why it's kind of been the gold standard for a while. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, spot on. I kind of agree with all of that as well. So,
all right. Well, great. That's a great place to wrap up. Mike, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do so?
I'd say LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Go to our company website. Let's connect and let's share experiences.
Sounds good, sir. Thanks for your time, Mike. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Pete.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Gap Fireside Chat. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. New episodes air every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern.